Hello, my name is Kieran Galvin. I'm a solutions consultant at PagerDuty, and today I'm going to show you how easy it is to get up and running with the PagerDuty Incident Resolution platform. PagerDuty is used to reduce your mean time to repair by ensuring that the right resource is always quickly identified and assigned to outstanding IT and DevOps incidents. Looking at this visual, moving from left to right, PagerDuty ingests hundreds of types of alerts and events from management tools, ticketing tools, monitoring tools, and logging tools in order to normalize that data and assign urgencies and assign the right person based off of an on-call rotation. PagerDuty does this by operating across 3 different active data centers utilizing 15 different providers for multi-channel communications via SMS, chat ops, email, and phone. PagerDuty is operating in over 170 countries and bringing value to over 8,000 customers every day. For today, we are going to cover the process of setting up your instance of PagerDuty, and we're going to start with an understanding of the event lifecycle so we can understand how to set up the relevant pieces within the PagerDuty platform. What typically happens on an application that is being monitored or watched, some type of threshold is attained. When that event takes place, that information is detected by a tool which in turn needs to determine what business service is affected by this threshold. Once that business has been identified, the next step is to figure out what team should take ownership and who is the actual resource on call right this moment. Once that person has been identified, the next step is to notify them via a channel that will ensure that they're able to take ownership. Without an incident resolution platform, this process is extremely fragile. With the PagerDuty process, we are going to reverse those steps in order to set up our configuration by first setting up the users, then assigning those users to an easy-to-use drag and drop on-call schedule. Then we will create escalation rules, which are policies to ensure which person should be contacted if the primary, secondary, tertiary, or further on is not available to take ownership. This ensures that nothing slips through the cracks. Next, we're going to configure services. Services are the pieces of the architecture that allow us to report against our microservices or business units in order to understand the risk associated with those thresholds. Then we're going to add in specific integrations and monitoring tools in order to ingest that data into PagerDuty. Now let's take a look at the PagerDuty application so we can start setting up our trial. In order to start your free 14-day trial of PagerDuty, just go to PagerDuty's homepage at www.pagerduty.com, and you will find on the upper right-hand corner a sign up button. Just select that button and you'll be presented with the form that you need to fill out in order to access that trial. Once you've completed all of this information, just select the button at the bottom, start your trial. Then you will have access to a free 14-day fully functional trial of PagerDuty. As a quick review, these are the items we're going to set up in the order we will be setting them up. Now let's go to the subdomain you just created via the trial process, and we're going to focus on the configuration menu item for the next few steps. From that menu, let's begin with the users. Once you get into the user section, you will see there is already one user that's been created for yourself since you began the trial. And in order to add additional users to the system, just select the Add Users button on the right. You would also be able to add users via a REST API script, or you can also integrate via a single sign-on solution. But for this exercise, we're going to add some users manually. And in order to do that, you'll add in the name, the email, and select the role. So there are multiple roles available. Once you get into the product, you have much more control over the granularity of the roles and the users. But for the sake of this example, let's add some responders. You are able to add more than one user at one time, and once you've entered those users, you can then send the invitations. The users who were just added will now receive emails giving them access to your subdomain as well as the ability to set their passwords. Now that the users have been added, they can change their contact methods and their notification rules to match the best methodology for contacting them. From the contact information, it's as simple as just typing in the phone number, SMS, email, also checking to see if your mobile application is selected, as well as going into the notification rules to enable those different channels for the different urgencies associated with your notifications. The next step after setting up the users is to set up schedules or rotations. To access that configuration item, just go to the main menu in PagerDuty, select configuration, and then schedules. And you will be taken to what is most likely a blank page as a new user. You have the choice of adding a new schedule either from a button on the upper right, or in this case, we'll select Add Schedule. And from this location, we are going to give a name to our schedule representing a 24/7 round-the-clock rotation. And PagerDuty is going to use multiple layers. Layers represent either shifts or potentially time zones. These allow PagerDuty users to share and rotate not only per day, but also within sections of days to create those shifts. For the first layer, we're going to select a few users. And once they are selected, you do have the choice of moving them around, deleting them, adding them again from the pick list. And then you would select the rotation type. For this first layer, which is going to be my day shift, I'm going to select a daily rotation. I'm going to have a handoff at 8 a.m. and I'm going to restrict these to specific hours beginning at 8 a.m. and going until 8 p.m. at night. As we scroll down, we will see the final schedule. There are indeed some gaps here because we have not added rotations for the second layer, which will be my night shift. By doing that, I will select this button here for adding another layer. I will select 2 additional users. Then we will use a weekly rotation. We're going to have a similar handoff time at night at 8 p.m. and also restrict those users to a specific time period, being 8 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, when we scroll down and take a look at the final schedule, which is a combination of layer 1 and layer 2, we see indeed there are no gaps in the schedule and we are able to represent the different layers for those different shifts or potentially different layers for different time zones around the world. It's very easy to do, and once we have this, we will save that schedule and we are complete. The next piece of the architecture we are going to cover are the escalation policies. The escalation policies are the piece of the PagerDuty configuration that really ensures that incidents never fall through the crack. This is where we are going to define what team is the primary on-call rotation. Then if they are unable to take ownership quickly, who should be notified next, and perhaps a third or fourth level as well. And basically, we want to ensure that there's always somebody who's able to work on the incident. Get to the escalation policies, just go to configuration escalations. There will be one default escalation already created when you started the trial, but for today, we are going to create a new escalation policy from the button on the upper right. We are going to give it a name. And we are going to select the first team that will be notified. In this case, this will be utilizing the schedule that we just created previously. The key is we have multiple layers to escalation policies. This one is going to be the first layer, indicates immediately after an incident is triggered who should take ownership. So in this case, PagerDuty is going to go to the 24/7 schedule, determine who is on call from that rotation, and notify them. If they are unavailable, 5 minutes later, we want to move to a new escalation rule. In this case, we are going to set this to go to Bhaskar, and if Bhaskar is unavailable 5 minutes later, we're going to go to a new rule, which will be Alex. Again, if Alex is unable to pick up 5 minutes later, we want this entire process to repeat more than once. Now, once you do get into the more complex and more realistic scenarios, you will likely have multiple schedules in your escalation policy, as opposed to having individuals on each of the additional rules. So for example, I've got my 24/7 schedule as the first level of my rule, and second, I have an individual who's on call 24 hours. Likely you would be adding additional schedules in here. You can also have more than one schedule at any one level if you wanted to notify more than one person, as well as you can have additional users or combinations of users and schedules for each one of those different items. Now that we've completed the escalation policy, the next step is to start creating our services. In order to access the services, we're going to go back to the configuration menu and select services from that drop-down. At this point, we will have a blank page for new users. And before we start adding services, I just want to go over briefly the value of selecting and configuring your services in a way that gives you the most power from PagerDuty. Ideally, your services will represent your business units or your microservices or some type of entity that you are using to deliver either to an external or internal customer. We don't necessarily want to name our services after specific technologies that are being monitored. Instead, we'd like to have it represent an item such as a shopping cart or maybe my database services or another type of container that really helps us immediately understand the potential impact of any outstanding issues with those services. In order to add a service, we have two choices, either from the Add New Service on the top, or we're going to use the button here in the middle. We are going to give our service a name. And from the integration settings section, we have a few choices. First of all, we can select from a list of just about 200 out-of-the-box integrations with PagerDuty. Any one of these items are very simple to set up. There's great documentation on the integrations page from PagerDuty's homepage, and you would easily just select one of these items from the drop-down and follow the steps in order to generate a key for PagerDuty. Other options you have from this section is you can integrate via email, you can integrate via the API directly. The PagerDuty platform has an awesome API. It's all REST-based, really simple to use, a great documentation which is available right from here. Or you might choose to not add an integration at this time. For this example, the first very simple integration, we're just going to integrate via email. And by doing so, PagerDuty becomes endpoint for emails that are sent to the PagerDuty platform. You get a unique PagerDuty email address. You can change the beginning of this email address to match your needs. Then you will choose your escalation policy, which we just created. In this case, we're going to add our DevOps escalation. Then we have some choices about how we'd like the notification urgency to take place. High urgency means this is extremely important and it needs to utilize each user's personal notification rules for high urgency incidents. Typically that will be cell phone, mobile, SMS, that will be multiple channels including chat app tools and pushing directly to the mobile application, whereas for low urgency notifications, these items may not require immediate attention, although they are still actionable. Notification rules for low urgency might typically be just an SMS or around email. And then you have the option of changing the urgency based off of your support hours. A use case might be during the day. The alerts come through as low urgency because people are sitting at their desk or they're in front of the glass and they know the issues immediately. Whereas when people leave and go home, we want that to switch to a high urgency. All of that is controllable from this setting. We are going to stick with the high urgency for this example. And then there are some more advanced settings around incident timeout and auto resolution. I would advise as a new user to unselect these items. These are really more powerful for the advanced scenarios. And then you have some choices around incident behavior. Again, a best practice is to select this first item, which is create alerts and incidents. This really gives you the power to merge and triage your incidents with a lot more tools in the PagerDuty toolset. Once I've done that, I can add my service, and what I will be presented with is an integration that is now within my customer experience service. So in my integration, in this case, it's simply named email, and I have an integration key that is an address to my subdomain. This is the unique endpoint that would trigger an incident on my customer experience service. One of the great things here is I can have multiple integrations. So in this case, I have email. I might also want to add in an integration for CloudWatch. All I would need to do would be to select that technology and add an integration. I would get a new key associated with that CloudWatch integration. This CloudWatch would then be configured using this unique key to point to the PagerDuty platform when an alert is set from Amazon CloudWatch. At this point, we have all of the configuration items completed, and we can trigger a test alert and acknowledge that item before wrapping up the setup for PagerDuty. In order to trigger our first incident, we're going to utilize the email integration in this service we just created. I'm just going to send this message into PagerDuty so it can be turned into a PagerDuty incident. As we can see, the incident has been triggered. We have information about the status, the urgency, a description of the incident, a history as far as when it was created, the service it has been assigned to, and the user who is automatically assigned to it through the on-call schedule capability. I'm just going to acknowledge this item in order to take ownership. And here we are. We have completed the trial configuration by adding users, creating a schedule, creating an escalation policy, adding a service with multiple integrations, and triggering and acknowledging a new incident. At this point, we have only scratched the surface of the incident resolution lifecycle. We have touched on just the initial configuration and a beginning of the assessment phase. In future recordings, we will cover the remaining areas in the assessment, including triaging, collaboration, adding stakeholders, resolving, creating postmortems, as well as going into the learning phase through reporting. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found this useful, and I expect that you will be able to get your PagerDuty trial up and running in just a few minutes. Thank you.